Hi, welcome to our YouTube-friendly version of NTD News. What you'll see here is only the content that YouTube allows. For our complete, uncensored broadcast, head on over to ntd.com, and you can click on the link below. See you there. Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. Former President Trump responds to additional charges in the classified documents case. How do the new charges affect his presidential run? Almost all Republican presidential candidates speaking in Iowa tonight. The Hawkeye state is crucial to candidates as it will hold the first GOP caucus of the 2024 presidential race. New emails from Facebook shedding light on the Biden administration's efforts to censor content. The social media company is saying it faced pressure over content related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Can Biden sell the economy? President Biden today takes his Bidenomics message to Maine and reacts to Republicans' impeachment threats. And an Alabama woman who faked her own kidnapping has been arrested. She faces 2 charges and possible jail time. Did former President Trump have security tapes deleted? He says he did nothing wrong. NTD's legal correspondent Arlene Richards has more on Trump's response to the new charges.
I don't think they think that the tapes were even changed. These were my tapes that we gave to them.
Former President Trump in an interview on the John Frederick Show responding to new charges added to his indictment in the classified documents case. In an updated indictment on Thursday, prosecutors accused Trump of 1 additional count of willful retention of national defense information and 2 additional obstruction counts. Prosecutors say Trump asked a staffer, Mar-a-Lago property manager Carlos de Oliveira, to delete camera footage at his Florida estate. This comes as they also added de Oliveira as a 3rd defendant and brought new charges against valet Walt Nelta. Trump told Fredericks that he's not sure he even had to turn over the tapes. He said he thinks prosecutors are trying to intimidate people.
So that people go out and make up lies about me because I did nothing wrong.
Some Republicans and Democrats reacted to the new charges.
I've always been concerned. I had dual secrets since I was 21 years old, top secrets and you name it. And we should protect them, and I mean, this is not something to take lightly.
Republican Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy questioned why President Biden hasn't been charged.
When he was a senator, he took a document. How many years is that, and there's been no prosecution? How can you be so quick to judge President Trump in a short time period, and you've had all this other, but you can't deal with that?
I am not a lawyer, but if you are deleting evidence, it's because you know you're committing a crime.
Well, the evidence was already strong in the original indictment, but in this superseding indictment now you just see how much more evidence the special counsel has.
Trump said despite the new charges, he is still leading in the polls, and he has no plans to step out of the race. But he had some advice for top contender Governor Ron DeSantis.
I think he has to get out for the good of the party.
Trump is scheduled to go to trial in May 2024 in Florida, at which point the Republican nomination may already be decided. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
13 Republican presidential candidates all speaking in Iowa tonight. The Lincoln Dinner is one of the GOP's largest annual fundraisers. Here are the details.
Almost all declared major candidates of the 2024 Republican presidential primary are in Iowa on Friday. They're scheduled to speak at the Lincoln Dinner, a Republican fundraising event in Des Moines. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis made a campaign stop in Albia, Iowa on Friday before heading to the state's capital. Iowa holds the first primary election in the nation. It's considered a key state for the candidates, hoping that they can surpass Trump's strong lead in polling. South Carolina Senator Tim Scott held a town hall in the Hawkeye state on Thursday. On Friday night, 13 Republican candidates each have exactly 10 minutes to address a crowd of around 1,200 people. To ensure compliance with the strict 10-minute rule, microphones will be deactivated after 10 minutes. Only former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie will be absent from the lineup. He's instead focusing his efforts on New Hampshire voters. Tickets to attend the event, which range in price from $150 to more than $1,000 per person, are sold out. Former UN Ambassador and South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley is the first speaker. DeSantis is scheduled to be third. Former President Trump is the last speaker of the night. DeSantis is in the middle of rebooting his campaign. A standard reboot usually includes 3 steps: cutting expenses and slashing staff, reshuffled leadership, and a shift in focus to more grassroots, smaller events in early primary states. DeSantis is currently doing all 3 of those things, and the governor is reportedly set to unveil his economic policy in New Hampshire on Monday. The policy is expected to be heavily focused on strategically decoupling the American economy from China and the globalist elites that have been wreaking havoc on the American dream. The speech is set to be the governor's 3rd major policy announcement.
In other election news, presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says the Biden administration denied his request for Secret Service protection. In a Twitter statement, Kennedy cited the assassination of his father, Robert F. Kennedy, during his 1968 campaign. He said since then, candidates for president have been provided Secret Service protection, but not for him. He explained that the turnaround time for filing a request is usually 14 days, but after more than 80 days of no response, he got a denial. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said the protection is not warranted. Kennedy cited a 67-page report from a protection firm which detailed different types of death threats and security risks for him. And 2 major moves by the Biden administration today. First, to improve the gas efficiency of cars, including passenger cars and trucks. It wants to raise the standard for new vehicles 18% by the 2032 model year. It says this would save vehicle owners over $1,000 in lifetime fuel costs, while increasing average vehicle costs by over $900. There will be a comment period before the rules get finalized. And President Biden also ordered a historic change to how sexual assault cases are prosecuted in the military today. It transfers key decisions outside the military chain of command. An independent review commission recommended the change 2 years ago. It's the most significant change of the military justice system since 1950s. The order will also apply to cases of domestic violence, child abuse, and murder, among other serious crimes. It's set to take effect by the end of the year. Amid all this, President Biden is actually in Maine for another day on the road selling the economy. He's touting Bidenomics amid pushback from Republicans. NTD's Iris Tao has more from the White House.
And President Biden traveled to Maine today to sell his Bidenomics agenda to blue-collar voters, especially in this particular congressional district that he lost to Donald Trump in 2020.
Bidenomics is just another way of saying restoring the American dream. We've created over 13 million new jobs.
During his visit today, Biden signed a new executive order aimed at boosting manufacturing of domestic inventions,
Which means more jobs.
and he touted the latest economic data that showed the economy grew faster than expected.
Wages are up.
But despite the administration's efforts to try to promote Bidenomics across the country, recent polls show that only 3 in 10 Americans believe that the economy is good. And Joshua Morris, a Republican state representative from Maine, told the Associated Press that, quote, Bidenomics is hurting working people in my district. He should be apologizing to us while he's here, not bragging. Meanwhile, President Biden today defended himself by taking aim at congressional Republicans.
The Washington Post suggested Republicans may have to find something else to criticize me for. Now that inflation is coming down, maybe they'll decide to impeach me because it's coming down. I don't know. I love that one.
And President Biden has been traveling weekly to talk about his Bidenomics agenda. But next week, he's going to take a break by taking a week-long vacation in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, before coming back here next Sunday. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
And Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell plans to serve for the rest of the current congressional session in his role as the GOP leader. McConnell's office made the announcement today, 2 days after he froze for about 30 seconds during a news conference. McConnell was back to work Thursday, but the 81-year-old has faced scrutiny over his health this year, starting in March when he suffered a concussion and broken ribs after falling at a Washington hotel. McConnell has led the Senate GOP for the past 16 years and is the longest-serving Senate party leader ever. Friday's statement does not address McConnell's plans in the next Congress, which begins in 2025. And Congress leaves D.C. today, leaving pressing tasks in limbo. Partisan disputes over spending are raising the likelihood of a government shutdown in October. NTD's Melina Weisskopf reports.
It's that time of year again where partisan disputes over spending are on full display here. While both the House and the Senate have passed the National Defense Authorization Act, the versions are a bit different. Those differences need to be reconciled. The main differences here are cultural ones. In the House side, they restricted funding for cultural issues like abortion, transgender care, diversity programs. The vast differences are even more so in the government funding bills. And what's compounding that problem is the fact that there are some in the GOP who are fiercely demanding spending cuts. Even some, like Congressman Bob Good, are willing to risk a government shutdown to meet those demands.
We should not fear a government shutdown. Right. Most of what we do up here is bad anyway. Most of what we do up here hurts the American people.
And here again, they want to strip funding for culture issues. Speaker McCarthy has encouraged House appropriators to write their spending bills under the levels agreed upon in the debt ceiling deal, but Senate appropriators have written their appropriations bills at much higher levels, setting up this collision course.
Look, he is the leader of the Senate, I'm the leader of the House. I don't want government to shut down. I want to find that we can find common ground.
Instead of just throwing out partisan bills that have no chance of passing.
We've seen this pretty regularly over the past couple of years, and what could happen is the Congress passes a temporary funding bill, but in this case, they're just spending money to kick the can down the road and deal with these disagreements later. Now, another issue here is that there are some Republicans who routinely vote against these type of temporary funding bills. So in this case, if McCarthy is to take this path, he might have to rely on some Democrat votes. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
New details on the Alabama woman who faked her own kidnapping. Police arrested Carlee Russell on Friday, and she's now out on bond. She faces 2 charges, false police reporting and false reporting of an incident. Both are misdemeanors, each carrying up to a year in jail. On July 13th, Russell called police to report she saw a toddler on the side of the road. When police showed up, she wasn't there, and there was no toddler. She reappeared 2 days later and said she had been abducted, but she later admitted that it was a hoax. The hottest day in years. The nation's capital today placed under an excessive heat warning as record-breaking temperatures continue to swelter the region. NTD's Sam Wong has more.
The swampy heat wave torching much of the U.S. this summer is settling here in Washington, D.C. Right now, the ground is sizzling, and the humidity isn't helping much either. As of this very moment, the temperature is at 95 degrees Fahrenheit, but it actually feels much hotter. Local officials said that the heat index is expected to break triple digits later today.
It's very, very hot. Very hot. And very wet.
Business is very slow because people are scared to come outside.
I feel a little distressed, and I don't think anybody should be out here right now.
I wear the hat, keep the sun off me, and I'm trying to stay in the air conditioning, mostly.
The extreme weather is forcing outdoors people to get into the shade, but a few, unrattled by the heat, are spotted jogging and riding under the sun. July is usually the peak season for tourism out here in D.C., but right now at the National Mall, if you look around me, there's very few people scattered here and there, which is very unusual for this time of year. On Wednesday, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser declared a hot weather emergency. Around 150 million Americans across the country are under similar warnings, sweeping west from the coast all the way to Kansas and dipping down into Louisiana. New York City and Philadelphia are also under heat advisories. People are urged to watch out for signs of heat-related illnesses, as it could be fatal under high temperature and extreme humidity. Forecasters in D.C. predicted that the heat index could top 110 through Saturday, marking a new record since 2016. For those who need to get away from the broiling sun, cooling centers and other facilities are available across D.C. And to catch a ride there, you can request free transportation by dialing 311. The National Weather Service is urging people to stay indoors, check up on neighbors and families, and most importantly, drink plenty of water. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Sam Wong, NTD News.
And staying in D.C., where earlier this week, a House subcommittee heard testimony from witnesses and experts on the state of the border. This financial year, Border Patrol has apprehended a record number of terror-watchlist suspects entering the country. Among those giving testimony at the hearing was Todd Bensman, Senior National Security Fellow at the Center for Immigration Studies. He also spoke with me earlier today. Todd, thanks so much for coming on. Border Patrol has now apprehended a record number of terror watch list suspects. What kinds of people are we talking about here, and how did we get here?
Right. Well, you have to remember that more than 40% of all illegal aliens crossing our southern border are from countries other than Mexico or Central America. The entire world is on their way here. Everybody has heard the siren call of our open borders and our policies that are letting pretty much everybody in. Just a month or so ago, I was in Matamoros in Mexico, and my entire hotel was filled with Kyrgyzstanis and Dagestanis. Everybody's coming, and so it's inevitable that some of them are going to be known to our intelligence agencies as potential terrorists, and that's who's coming.
And now you testified before the House this week and said that the increase in illegal immigration is transforming American society and that children are being affected the most. Could you expand on that?
We rarely hear about the fact that most of the people that are coming across are in family groups or unaccompanied minors, and they have to go to school in the United States, and now they have to take standardized tests, overcrowding, the purchase of portable classrooms, security issues, gang problems, and these are starting to hit Americans. It's a pocketbook issue, it's a public safety issue, and it's a quality of education issue throughout the interior of the United States. I just wanted to get that on the record in the Congress.
Absolutely. And you also brought up mass asylum fraud at the border and other legal loopholes that people are using to get into the country. You spent a lot of time down at the border. Could you tell us what you've seen in that sense?
Right. Well, to get asylum, to qualify for asylum in this country, you have to be able to show that you have been politically persecuted by the government of your home country. But the vast majority of people coming across are, by indication from my interviews with thousands of them, are economic migrants are coming here to work. They're not fleeing something. They're just coming to and for something in the United States. That's not an eligible grounds for asylum. And a lot of the immigrants that I talk to are very well aware that they have to come up with some kind of story, and they all know that nobody's going to check it. It's not checkable. But when you catch them down there before they've been lawyered up, as I do, they'll just tell you, yeah, I can make $30 a month in Colombia doing my job, but in the U.S. I'll make $150. So, why wouldn't I do that? That is not asylum. That is something entirely different. But they're going to claim asylum, and they're going to be lying about it.
Right. Now, you said in the same hearing that 100% of crimes committed by illegal immigrants are avoidable, which I thought was very interesting. But that's in response to some studies that show that illegal immigrants commit fewer crimes than American citizens. Could you speak to that?
That's right. I took heat for that, but I'm happy to do it. I'm just saying every crime by an illegal immigrant is a crime that was unnecessary, that was preventable. And you can't say the same thing for American citizen crime, at least not in the context of an apparatus that's deporting, that could deport them.
Okay, now one argument that was brought up is that it's not possible to stop illegal immigrants from crossing our borders. But you've said that it is, and that illegal immigrants actually pay close attention to the decisions that our government is making on the border. What kinds of policies can be put in place to prevent the influx, do you think?
Well, we saw definitive evidence during the Trump administration, during the Trump years, that policies do play a critical factor in the decision-making processes of immigrants while they're still home. Will the money that I pay get me into the country and get me in to stay? If the answer is no, I'm not dropping the cash. I'm not spending that money on smugglers. I'm staying home. And they did in huge numbers. The administration of Trump had about 20 or 30,000 apprehensions a month. The very next month, after Biden took office and got rid of those policies, remain in Mexico, Title 42, they opened up all kinds of exemptions. The numbers went to 200,000 a month and never looked back. All-time records, every record in the book's broken because the immigrants are smart. They pay attention to policy and they ask themselves, will my money pay off? It's that simple.
All right, thank you so much. Todd Bensman, Senior National Security Fellow at the Center for Immigration Studies. Really appreciate your insights. Welcome back. If you're just joining us now, here are some of today's top headlines. Former President Trump responds to new charges against him in the classified documents case, saying he did nothing wrong. The Justice Department is accusing Trump of deleting security footage at his Mar-a-Lago estate. Newly released emails appear to confirm that Facebook censored content about COVID-19 because of pressure from the Biden administration. Employees said they removed posts claiming that the virus was man-made because the White House wanted them to, quote, do more. Carlee Russell, the Alabama woman who faked her own kidnapping, was arrested today and is now out on bond. She faces 2 charges, false police reporting and false reporting of an incident. Both are misdemeanors, each carrying up to a year in jail. In Illinois, a public university has reached a settlement with a former student who claimed the school silenced her for expressing conservative views. Here's what the student told Fox News in a June interview.
I participated in classroom discussions in which we discussed contentious issues such as race relations or religion, and for therapists, the postmodern theoretical framework. And so these were discussed within the classroom setting, and so I was alarmed when I had received 3 no-contact orders that prevented me from having direct or indirect communication with these 3 students. Essentially, they were restraining orders that applied to on and off campus.
Maggie DeYoung was a graduate student at Southern Illinois University Edwardsville. She said the school issued a no-contact order on her after 3 students complained about her social media posts on issues such as abortions and the police. The order prohibited her from fully participating in class discussions. As part of the settlement, the university will pay DeYoung $80,000, and 3 professors at the school will undergo First Amendment training. The university said in a statement to NTD that it is, quote, unequivocally committed to protecting First Amendment rights and does not have policies that restrict free speech nor support censorship. How much control should parents and local leaders have over education? And should the state have overarching control? This is an important topic as a Southern California school board says it was dissatisfied with what the state is teaching children. NTD's David Lamb speaks with the Temecula Valley School Board trustee.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Earlier this year, several board members with the Temecula Valley Unified School District rejected a state-approved curriculum, saying it's not age-appropriate for 4th graders. Newsom threatened to fine the district $1.5 million if it didn't approve the curriculum. Is there legal grounds for this? Well, the state superintendent, Tony Thurman, told reporters that there is a bill that would allow California to send books and fine the district over the issue if passed.
AB 1078 would actually establish this process, and that bill is being heard in the legislature, and it does have an urgency clause. And so we're waiting to see what happens with that bill. I would just say that we are currently investigating the Temecula Valley School District.
Temecula Valley Board President Joseph Komrosky and school trustee Jen Wiersma said the school ended up adopting the curriculum with modifications to avoid a lawsuit.
But at the end of the day, I think he really felt strongly that we wanted to be kept out of litigation and that we wanted to modify the curriculum. And that's the beauty of local control. So what we did is we adopted that 4-0.
Part of the curriculum covers the civil rights movement, mentioning groups and people who advocated for gay rights. Board members said they felt the topics were unsuitable for young children. Members also said parents had not been adequately consulted about the curriculum. Wiersma believes the statewide curriculum could improve by expanding its offerings and letting school boards maintain deciding when things are age appropriate.
There are only 4 or 5 that California has stamped as adopted, and I would love to see a more classical leaning with history.
She hopes other school districts could also look into local control and have parents involved while teachers rewrite some aspects. In Santa Clara, California, David Lamb, NTD News.
And staying in California, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or NAACP, in Oakland published a letter sounding the alarm over rising crime in that city. Earlier today, I spoke with journalist, documentary filmmaker, and Oakland resident Leighton Woodhouse for his perspective on the situation. Leighton, thanks so much for joining us. Oakland's NAACP is calling on local officials to declare a state of emergency around crime. You've covered this area in depth. How would you describe the state of affairs there?
It's crazy, and it's getting crazier. You may have heard this story that this week there was a naked woman who stepped out of her car on the freeway on the Oakland side of the Bay Bridge and started just shooting at cars. Obviously suffering some kind of psychotic break or something. But that was pretty wild, even by Bay Area standards. But also another viral video that went around this week was of a car jacking up on Skyline Boulevard, which is really kind of the nice part of town. It's like where people go to walk their dogs on nature trails in the redwoods. Car pulls over, blocks the path and gets out with a gun and just at 8 a.m. in the morning and just tries to jack this person's car at gunpoint. There have been over 8,000 car break-ins in Oakland just so far this year, which is a 50% increase over last year. Oakland has the second worst 911 pickup time in the state. People feel very insecure. Crime is rampant. It's pretty crazy.
That's so incredible. Now, I want to look at the where this all started. The NAACP is blaming failed leadership, including the movement to defund the police, anti-police rhetoric, as well as the district attorney for the increase in crime. From your perspective, how accurate is that?
Well, last night there was a town hall that I attended with the district attorney who rarely does public appearances, and it was absolutely packed, standing room only. And she doesn't see her job as preventing crime. She said that straight up, that the DA doesn't have a role in preventing crime. And that's a problem because that's not the way that traditional DAs look at this stuff. There were also laws that were passed. For example, there was a law passed in statewide in California, which makes it more likely that a police officer who shoots somebody, who shoots somebody in error, shoots somebody innocent, somebody unarmed, which happens on the job sometimes as a good faith accident, like the officer thinks that somebody's holding a gun or whatever. It's more likely that that officer will end up in prison. And whatever you think about the fairness of that law, the consequence has been that officers don't want to end up in prison, so they have been transferring out of high crime cities and going to low crime suburban areas. So Oakland, along with many other cities, has had a crisis in recruitment and retaining of cops.
And yet, in some sense, people may feel that they shouldn't really be speaking out against it. I noticed that the NAACP is urging African Americans, white, Asian, and Latino communities to speak out against crime. And they say that people shouldn't be shamed into silence. How much do you think this is at play?
I think that has been the case in the past. I think that is becoming no longer the case as so many people have become victims to crimes, everything from armed robberies to just their cars being broken into. This crime wave has overwhelmingly impacted low-income people in the flatlands of Oakland who are majority non-white. Those neighborhoods have been the most besieged by this crime wave. So those are the folks who are suffering, and those are the folks who the NAACP is speaking out on behalf of and saying to those more affluent middle-class people in the hills, as well as working-class people in other parts of the city, we need you to speak out along with us, because a lot of folks in those low-income quote unquote black and brown communities have been speaking out about this for quite a while.
Right. So they're wanting to get this message out there. more loudly, more clearly to try and affect some change.
Yes.
All right. Great to speak with you on this. Leighton Woodhouse, journalist, documentary filmmaker, and co-founder of Public. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Job seekers, take note. New research shows that employees who are more agreeable make better teammates. It's a trait that hiring managers are seeking right now. Why are they looking for agreeableness, and what other traits are they looking at? NTD's Colin Frederickson has more.
Hiring managers are looking for people who are more agreeable. A recent study found a high positive correlation between agreeableness and team performance. People who are more agreeable are more likely to cooperate and compromise with their teammates.
Those with higher agreeableness, they're more compassionate, they're more trusting, they're more eager to help others. And those with lower agreeableness, more competitive and skeptical.
Psychologist Ryan Warner says highly competitive people don't necessarily make great team members. They can make the environment less inviting, and trust also becomes an issue. Agreeableness is one of the big 5 personality traits: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. This is a widely accepted framework that's used to assess differences in personality.
While we're going through the screening and the vetting process, we have several tests that we run, as well as we have in-house psychologists that run interviews in order to look for key traits.
Raquel Gomez is the CEO of Staffy, a firm that evaluates job seekers. She says the big 5 personality traits are a key metric for evaluating potential hires. The key traits she looks for: conscientiousness. This is very important. This is a person's level of discipline, organization, and reliability. Extroversion, for the confidence to speak up. And meanwhile, she always looks for low levels of neuroticism. This generally refers to a person's emotional stability.
People that having high neuroticism is, overly exaggerating on things that happen that are not going the way they are expected, right? So overly dramatizing.
The recent study also found that neuroticism decreases team performance. It says high neuroticism leads to anxiety and fear, which can impair cognitive functioning. People can learn more about where they fit in the big 5 personality traits by taking online assessments, doing self-reflection, or seeking feedback from others. Experts highly advise asking the people around you because they can give the best feedback about your personality. Colin Frederickson, NTD News.
And now for your sports news. Here's NTD's Dave Martin with a major college conference on the brink.
That's right, Steph. Colorado is now the latest team to flee the Pac-12. The university announced yesterday they're headed back to the Big 12, where they were previously a founding member back in 1996 and have relationships with some existing members that date back to the 1940s when they were part of the Big 7 and later Big 8. The move is the latest blow to the Pac-12, which is still reeling from the announced losses of USC and UCLA last summer to the Big 10. Now, the move by Colorado will coincide with the end of the Pac-12's television deal, mirroring the timing of the moves by UCLA and USC, meaning they won't have to pay an exit fee. It comes at a time when the Pac-12 has been slow in finding a suitable TV deal beyond next season. The move could also mark the latest in a line of dominoes to fall for the Conference of Champions, much like what happened to the Big East more than a decade ago. As such, ESPN is reporting that the Big 12, which with the addition of Colorado and defections of Texas and Oklahoma after the season will be at 13 teams, met Friday and are now looking to add a 14th member, though no specific names were mentioned. And in NFL news, free agent running back Dalvin Cook said on the NFL Network's Good Morning Football that he was visiting the New York Jets on Sunday and sounded optimistic that a deal would happen. Said the 6-year veteran, quote, "I think we're in a position of, a team that's building something special, and I want to be part of something special as a player. I want to add to whatever they've got going on." The 27-year-old Cook was released by Minnesota on June 8, despite 4 straight Pro Bowl selections. And for your sports viewing schedule tonight, a full slate of baseball games, including Shohei Ohtani's LA Angels, who've won 8 of their last 9 to jump back into the playoff race. They play at Toronto. And that's it for your sports news today. Steph, back to you.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox. Good night.